Good morning to you, Kate. Happy Sunday.
You too, Kate. Nice to see you.
And always nice to see you. I'm looking behind you. You've got your Christmas decorations happening.
Yes, that time of the year. Why not?
And is that an that I see to the
It
right of?
is. It is, yes. I couldn't help but put that up there because it's a bit of a nice thing to have by your side.
Absolutely. And you kind of live by the don't you? Through art
I
of.
do. It's actually my favorite thing to teach in my yoga courses. What is and chanting It's just lovely.
In the beginning, there was sound.
Yes. And it's the fact that it's just a sound, it's not another language, and that we can all relate. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, it's very, very universal. Yeah. So thank you a lot for coming on a Sunday. Really appreciate it. We've been running this series and interviewed a few people all about grace. It means a lot of different things to a lot of people. But I'm wondering, when you think about living in grace, how does that land for you? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I first start with probably my teaching and my spiritual practices. But yeah, your question just now made me think of how is it in my life in general. The way I like to talk about things is how I experience it. So look, going back 20 years ago, when I heard of the word grace, I would have thought more around, the physical. Like, for example, I had a friend who was very graceful, the way she moved and the way she moved in the world as well, just very light touch and just a kind of a very centered person. But that was 20 years ago, and that's kind of what came to my mind. But these days with grace, it's a bit different for me since I've been doing my spiritual practices and personal growth. I experience grace a bit differently. For example, when I'm teaching a course, I want the class to have a great experience. So beforehand, I will, sit in silence and just try to connect. And for me, I guess connecting means connecting to that grace or the divine. And that might come through from my teacher or just in general, asking for that guidance to have a great class. And so I have experienced that where I feel as if there's a guiding hand that's helping me out in terms of just sharing that beautiful knowledge. So I feel like I was sort of a conduit for that to come through, and that's what I was asking for. So the mind doesn't get in the way when you're sharing that beautiful yogic knowledge. So I guess that's one of the examples, and then there's a few more, but I'll let you keep going.
Beautiful. I love two things that you said in particular. One was harking back 20 years ago to somebody that you were friends with or might still be friends with. But it's that when you come across somebody who's living in grace, it's quite magnetic, isn't it? You feel just automatically clear or relaxed or comfortable in their company.
Yes. Yes, I think clear was the word. It was as if she was very clear a lot of the time in how she, responded to things and lived. And it was magnetic. I wanted to be around that, and I was around that. It was great. That was my experience of grace back then.
Yeah, you can pick them out, or I can anyway, in my life, the people that I have felt that I was in the company of something a bit larger than just she or he and I sitting in that room. And you alluded to that in your practice, which again, in the teaching, in the practice, we're teaching and we're practicing in order to live in that kind of field. And it's a practice, and it's like any practice, it takes devotion and time, doesn't it? You have to keep going there. Yeah.
Yes. And it's a nice thing to do before class as well, or before an event. Or I also am trained in Mama, which is an energetic healing modality through Ayurveda. And before we begin, we do a chant. So it's a chant about health. But when I chant, it's Sanskrit, and it just feels like I am tapping into something. Whether you call it the divine consciousness, grace, it's just that little helping hand and invisible guidance for how you help that client and let whatever needs to flow through.
And you said it before, getting out of the way, that feeling.
Exactly.
Just all the minutiae of a day-to-day life that tend to still be in process inside you need to shift. And, for me anyway, going through the tougher periods of life, having to move back into that space in order to provide the healing, in order to teach the yoga. Wow, what a saving grace.
That's exactly, and you put it so well, Kate. That's exactly, it's getting out of the way. It's let it, bypassing the mind so that that person, that class can have a wonderful experience. And, over time, the mind settles down, but it's always good to tap in any case, because sometimes that grace that comes through is something that's needed for that class, for those people that you might not be aware of. So it's something bigger than you, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, we're inevitably limited, aren't we? Here we are in a physical form. And I think, sometimes when I started my practices, I've been doing body work for 40 something years. There were times, Kate, when I wasn't able to get out of the way. And do you know what used to happen? Maybe half a dozen times when I hit somebody with really lots going on, I'd have to excuse myself and go and vomit. So it was not a very skillful use of me at that point. It was early in my practice, but I couldn't process that. And because I was trying to process that, and I think it's a protective thing too, isn't it, for therapists? Or not protective, I think that's the wrong word, but it's the way that healing actually works, is to step out of the space, or your limitations step out of the space, and you're able to move things through and give it up to spirit, for want of a better way of putting it, so that it's not you having to vomit.
As practitioners, there are things that we can do that we should be doing as well, depending on what classes and courses we're teaching. We can shower, and we can just have some silence. We can do some breath work as well. There's nothing wrong with that, to just come back to our own energies, and it makes sense, because we are, a lot of it is energy work. So
yeah, we call it clearing the field, and that's exactly what you're doing, because energy is energy, and it has its funny way about it. Yeah. Diving in the ocean.
Yes, I do that up here if there weren't so many crocodiles. They've got nets, but it just doesn't do it for me.
You might really clear the field.
I will be a very fast swimmer, yes.
Scary things, those crocodiles. I think going barefoot on the grass is also, that works just as well.
I am surprised, actually. It's funny you should bring that up. I've been doing that more and more. I have a driveway that's like a dirt driveway, and I just walk up and down that, because there's a lot of concrete out there. So I've got parks nearby, but I just walk up and down my driveway because it's dirt, and I do feel very connected. And I love what you're doing for the Australia Day and connecting to the land, or whatever the new name is.
Go barefoot on Belonging Day.
Belonging Day, yes.
Yeah. And, a state of grace to me is that sense of belonging, to know that we're in the right place at the right time, which is the deepest sense of belonging. And it is that easy, isn't it? It's about taking your shoes off in respect to the culture that's always been here. Like I wondered just how grounded you'd be if you were born, and then at the other end of your life you died, and you'd had your shoes off the entire time.
That would be wonderful. Yes, that's a good reminder as well, that in terms of grace, living gracefully on the land, and with the people who walked here before us and who are still here today, of course, and just being mindful of that. That's graceful as well. And connecting with the ancestors and people who've looked after these lands for so many thousands of years so that we can be here. Yeah, that's graceful as well. There's this fantastic book I read called Treading Lightly. And I think
I love that book.
It's such a good term, isn't it? Treading lightly in the world with people, with the environment.
In fact, I'm just going to urge anybody that's listening into us right now to go out and get that book. It's written from Wiradjuri country, I think, isn't it, Kate? From the western New South Wales.
Yeah, I think it's around that area, yeah.
And living in grace in tandem, and grace and deep thanks and deep understanding of everything that's around us, not just other humans. Yeah.
Yes, but treading lightly, I just love that term, because when I was talking about that friend of mine, I felt like that's what she was doing as well. Just mindful of your footprint and, what you're consuming, what you're leaving behind, and your impact on others around you. I guess that's just about being mindful, but it's also connecting in as well with what's right. But it's easy to talk about. I think what we need to do lots more of is talk about the tools and the how. I think a lot of people talk about things in theory, but I think it's good to talk about the how.
And for those hows to be really, really simple.
Yes.
And the art of living that you teach, I know you've talked to me before about how much it's given you and how much it gives everybody that comes across those simple tools about how to live mindfully, because mindfulness has to be a precursor to that state of grace. So how about you? Like, how did you actually come to be teaching what you teach?
I was always a bit philosophical, and I started off learning. Look, I was considering becoming an Oriental therapist or Chinese doctor, and came across a college there because when I went in there to get some help, they asked about my emotional management as well, and I thought, that's great. So I started off learning about Taoism and Oriental psychology. And I did that for a couple of years, but then my teacher died. So then after a year or so, I was at a community centre, and there was a lady there who had that grace and that beautiful energy and a smile, an undying smile. And one day I just had to say, Suma, what are you on? Like, literally, what are you on? And she told me about this course with the art of living, and I looked it up, and I was like, oh yeah, it had a mass following, and I was a little bit at first, questioning that, and the mind questioning everything. But because it was happening at the community centre I was working at, and after she got to know me, she said, Kate, I think you'll really like it, just do it. So I did. And look, I was doing yoga before that here and there, but after that course, it sort of solidified it for me, and I found my teacher and also a group. I always found the group practice really helpful. And I guess I took it more seriously when we did our part 2 course, which is a silence course. And it was a 5-day silence course. And that's when something hit me, and I just went a bit deeper in my practice. And I could see the teachers were walking the talk. So it went from there, and then I did more and more courses, and then there was an opportunity to go to India in 2016.
Okay.
The main reason to go there was because we were running a multicultural event, like a world multicultural festival, and I was kind of doing that in my work in Sydney around multiculturalism, and I thought, I'm going to go. And I thought, look, I'll do my yoga teacher training while I'm there. So in 2016 was when I became a yoga teacher at the Bangalore Art of Living ashram, and then came back and started. And then kind of thanks to COVID, because I did want to do extra training, but I thought I'd have to go back to India. However, the course came to me online. So I did an advanced training in 2000, I think it was 2020 online, and that's my journey. Yeah.
In the middle of that moment we call COVID.
Yes, I really jumped in early on.
Yes.
Maybe I knew we were going to be online from here on in, really.
And you've always struck me as a pretty joyful person. So I think I've only really known you since you've been involved with Art of Living. And I guess that's given you an awful lot, a lot of joy, which is also one of the, it marries well with grace, doesn't it? Like it,
yes,
as a concept.
Yes. Yeah, because it also marries with contentment as well. I mean, we all have our days and our moments. No one's perfect, but it just definitely has changed my life for the better. Using the breath in that way has really helped me in terms of more happiness, more stability, like physiologically in terms of your heart rate and your breathing. You know, if you're prone to any anxiety, your breath gets shortened, and so I've just found that as such a great tool to just feel more natural and comfortable in my own skin, and therefore have been doing it a lot ever since.
Beautiful. You know, at its very center point, which is the breath in Art of Living, that's just such an important tool, isn't it, for living in grace, because it doesn't take much. It just takes a few minutes of focusing back into breath to become present, and therefore to release all that fear of what's coming up, fear, horror of what's just been, and to move into that state of presence and grace. I wonder for you, what image comes up when you think about the word graceful? What mental image?
A wind, a wind, like a flow. In Chinese Taoism, they call it Wu Wei, which is like be like water. But yes, when I think of grace, I feel it's a bit of a magical wind that comes through, maybe when you're not expecting it, or when you have connected in somehow through chanting or just praying or whatever you do, and it's just there, and it's just a guiding force. And so, yeah, I guess it's like wind for me, or a flow.
Beautiful. It's invisible. It's all surrounding. It's pervasive. It's what we take in and pass out. We become part of that flow. Yeah.
And it's subtle, just even in nature, when you're sitting in a forest or the bush and you can just feel that wind, you can hear it. And sometimes it just comes up when you're not even realizing it. It's beautiful. It's like spirit, I guess.
When you're saying that, your beautiful Christmas decorations started to move. We just this week only, I've been living down here in Yuan country for some number of years. I discovered the names for all the different winds in language, and it's made such a difference to be able to call the wind by name. And we've got Balia happening at the moment, which is the northeast wind, and it's just this beautiful warmth that keeps coming right through. And I was saying to my friend today that I couldn't but walk slowly, like it was just so clear what you have to do. Whereas if you're sitting out there in a Guru Gama, which is a really, really strong westerly, you know what you have to do. You have to take shelter, you have to batten down the hatches, it's a different kind of thing altogether. So I think that's a beautiful synonym for grace. Thank you very much. I feel like you've probably given some great hints to everybody that's listening into us right now about how to best come back to grace, and talked about the importance of moving beyond the principles and into the practical and the how-to. Is there anything else that you wanted to add with the how-to before we?
Yeah, I really appreciate chanting. I really feel that can help you connect to whatever you want to call it, the grace, divine consciousness, because it is that divine sound, that divine vibration. And so, I mean, I chant Sanskrit, but there are other ways of chanting and connecting in, but obviously meditation as well, because that can increase that intuition and settle that mind so that grace can come through. And look, I'm not saying you can always get the grace when you want it. I think grace is a bit more mysterious, which is lovely, actually. I think it can be like a gift, so it can come when you're not expecting it. And then other times I think you can possibly tap into it when it's the right timing, divine timing.
And there's things we can do to welcome it into our existences, for sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and like you said, I think to help welcome it, we do our practices to clear that mind, to clear the field, so that it can be that vessel that it can travel through or with or around, and it can come from those places where, whether it's a lineage of knowledge or a teacher or just that field of consciousness or nature. Different ways, I guess.
Yeah.
Places it can come from.
Beautiful. Oh, well, I urge everyone to look out for that grace out there over the next period. And, I think one of the precursors or ways that we can prepare for grace is having enough rest. And being quiet and listening. And certainly we're moving into that time of year, aren't we, as we slow down into the summer period. So hope everybody gets a chance to chill out and open their ears and open their hearts and minds.
Lovely. Well put, Kate.
Well, thank you so much for being part of this series, and enjoy everything.
Thank you for the opportunity, Kate. It's lovely. I feel very grateful.